Hey everyone, welcome back to Unfiltered Faith Sessions. I wanted to do an after the episode kind of response to the very first episode I did about is Donald Trump the Antichrist? And I did get some surprising responses, even some threatening ones. Some saying that I was trying to say he was the Antichrist, which is hilarious to me, since that's not what I said in the video. And then others saying, kind of almost questioning my Christianity because I didn't believe he was. Very interesting. But I would say that everybody's allowed to have their opinion. And here's the problem with most people out there is the minute that you hear something you disagree with, you throw a temper tantrum instead of acting like an adult. That's why I always say, if you're going to leave a comment, please stay classy. But I want to revisit that. And here's my thoughts, because I did just view a video stating all the reasons that Donald Trump is the Antichrist. But I can't get on board with it. And the reason why is, yes, there are a lot of things in the Bible and descriptions that match up with Donald Trump. He is boastful. He is very prideful. He does not, he's quoted as saying that he doesn't ask God for forgiveness. But, that isn't necessarily the same as declaring that he is God. And, another thing here is we have had several individuals that have claimed to, or that we have thought were antichrists over the centuries, ever since Jesus's time. You have figures like Nero, Napoleon, Hitler, Stalin. We have Donald Trump. But according to the Bible, none of these men fit the prophetic description of man of lawlessness. And here's just what does the Bible say about the Antichrist? Well, in terms of Antichrist, it appears primarily in 1 John and 2 John, referring to anyone who denies Jesus as the Christ or opposes his teachings. John 2:18 says, "Have you heard that the Antichrist is coming? Even now many Antichrists have come." Thessalonians 2:3-4, "The man of lawlessness exalts himself above every god and sets himself up in the temple of God, or the God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God." The Antichrist wouldn't be just a political figure. He would be a spiritual deceiver empowered by Satan, who would perform false miracles and demand worship. This is where Donald Trump doesn't fit that description. Donald Trump has never claimed to be divine or demand worship. There are no evidence at this time of him performing miracles or malicious deceptions. At least at this time. And I get some things could be interpreted, but I don't see him pulling, healing people and recovering the blind. And that's what kind of are helping people see they're blind. That's where that to me is a miracle, a divine miracle, not purely just being deceptive. All right. Trump is a national influence. He's not a global influence. The Antichrist, the entire world will recognize this person as a leader. Controls commerce through the mark. There's no such system that exists under his leadership at this time. And empowered directly by Satan. Scripture shows this is a unique end-time event. And most of what I feel on this is that it's just down to timing. If you was to look at Nero in the first century, he persecuted Christians, early believers, and during Christian time, he was uh, ugly, ugly, mean man. I mean, he even like killed his own wife. And he's also responsible for like the burning of Rome. And then he blamed it on the Christians. I mean, yeah, just nasty, nasty dude. You got Napoleon Bonaparte. He was not he was a global conqueror, maybe, but he was seen as the beast rising from the sea. Going back to Nero, he was seen. Is a belief system that Revelations has already happened, and that was referring to Nero. Adolf Hitler, he was a dictator, and many thought he was the final Antichrist. The way he spoke. Joseph Stalin, he was an atheistic. He was over an atheistic regimen. He was a heavy persecutor of the church. Ronald Reagan is a good one too. They believed he could have been the Antichrist because of his name having 6 letters in each part of it. Barack Obama was thought to be an Antichrist, accused of conspiring with terrorists due to global influence. So he had his time with it. And you have Donald Trump, labeled by critics because he's so polarizing, and he uses religious imagery. But prophetically, he's not there yet. It's even something that I feel like is interesting, especially whenever you read Luke 22:3. When we read about Judas, the betrayer of Christ, he would have been considered an antichrist as well, because it says that Satan, directly influenced him or directly entered him. This would have been a prototype for the end times antichrist. So there's a lot to think about. There's things that still must happen. There still has to be a global deception and apostasy. We need to have a rise of a one world government and economy. We still have to see the false prophet performing miracles. There needs to be a temple built in Jerusalem. And not to mention the man of lawlessness must go say that they are God in that temple. And the temple's not built yet. There seems to be a lot of planning towards it, but it's not there quite yet. The peace covenant is got to be there, which it's not quite there, not in the way that the Bible talks to it. And there has to be a worldwide persecution of believers. So none of that has really come to fruition yet. People keep making this mistake, and the reason why is it's a fear of cultural collapse. We have these political figures that are polarizing, and also a big misuse of apocalyptic imagery. And a misspread of information that is apocalyptic in nature. Social media amplifies this in a lot of ways, and social media also is not the Bible. So a lot of people really give their give hot takes on it, and it gets clicks. There is a lack of biblical literacy when people go to talk about these topics. Revelation, the real focus of end times faith is that we should be watchers. Matthew 24:42 says, "Therefore keep watch, because you do not know what day your Lord will come." And Revelations 22:12, "Behold, I am coming soon." These are prophecies. The point of prophecy is preparation, not speculation. We have to remember that. The thing is, you need to be watching your heart, and you need to be aware. Now, at the time of the recording this, I think Trump's got like maybe a year left in office. I think he's 20. Yeah, I think this is the 3rd year of his office, because 2028 would be the election time again. anytime that we're in a time of war, and then it doesn't help, we are having a rise in natural disasters, and we are seeing a rise in earthquakes and volcanic activity. That is something to be watching, because that's telling you of the birth pains in the season. Could Donald Trump be the Antichrist? Well, I don't think it's likely, because he's so close to the end of his term. And don't get me wrong, he matches a lot of things, but is he an Antichrist, or is he just a very self-absorbed man who thinks very, very highly of himself? That would be interesting. Now, if it was to be some kind of weird thing where he ended up doing a third term or was in some other kind of political power, hey, maybe. I think it all depends on, does Satan or the spirit of the Antichrist enter into this person that is going to be the man of lawlessness, the Antichrist, and the bringer of the coming of Christ. The presence of this person on the world stage will then it'll be time for Jesus to come. But we haven't seen enough happen yet, and I just don't know that it's going to happen fast enough for this to be a possibility. That is why I have my opinion on that. And look, folks, you should never, ever get upset with somebody and question their faith because they have a difference of a point of view on prophecy of all things. Of all things. Look, we all of us that believe in Jesus as our Savior, we're all on the same page here. The biggest problem that is happening with the Christian faith today is infighting, of people arguing and being overly legalistic and taking their eyes off of Jesus and putting the eyes on themselves in this I'm right mentality. We all need to stop doing that. It doesn't matter what your faith, your denomination is. If you believe in the Trinity, and that's the side of religion that you're on, these things are not worth the extent that we get at each other. We need to quit it. I've experienced more persecution from Christians than I have any other group. And it blows my mind. But the thing about it is regardless of what your thoughts are, we have to keep our eyes open and be aware and stay awake. One of the things that always struck me was at Gethsemane when Jesus was praying. He kept telling his apostles to stay awake, and they kept on falling asleep. And he's saying we need to be watchful. We should be doing that, but we need to watch ourselves too, because a lot of times we get wise in our own understanding, and we start down a wrong path, and we start becoming a persecution style believer rather than a waymaker. Christians weren't called Christians in the beginning. They were called the Way. Then at Antioch, they were coined as Christians, but they were the believers of the Way. And I really like that idea, because everything else is getting very negative with all the infighting and especially all of the false teaching that's out there, where we have these faith healers that persecute people saying, well, you weren't healed because you didn't have enough faith. But yet that person is putting themselves out there in that way. It creates a lot of hurt, and it pushes a lot of people away from Jesus. But anyway, that's my take. I'm curious. If you all have come across something that's new or that I haven't found, I would be interested here. I mean, remember, this is strictly a theological discussion. We don't know anything yet until it's happened. So be easy with each other and don't be so condemning. It's ugly. It's an ugly way to be in life. Anyway, that's what I got. If you want to email me, you can email me at ufsessions at gmail.com. You can drop a comment. I would be curious to hear what you said. And, folks, like I said, keep it classy. All right. Talk to you next time.